So when you got it, when you were taken off the EPF, where were you sent?
I went back to the cadet org like I knew I would, and I was assigned the post of exec esto, which was
Okay, let's stop for a second here.
Okay.
That means executive establishment officer.
Yeah, and I would do
And what
programs.
were your duties?
Like I would write up programs with the cadet coordinator of ways to improve the cadet org, and then I'd have to implement those programs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I become the HAS because they think that post, HCO area secretary, I'm in charge of the division of the org that includes like ethics and staff and
Recruiting.
and the mail and
taking care of the
recruiting,
personnel.
yeah, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going along on this, and my dad in the meantime was scheming to get me out, him and my sister, and he says, let's go to Hawaii. And I said, oh my God, a vacation to Hawaii? So we went to Hawaii.
How did you get approval to go?
Oh, it was hard because we were going to Hawaii for 10 days, and I said, well, I'm going to take, a big LOA. I'm going to take like a month or 5 weeks. Or my mom was saying, okay, you can go, but I want you to go for 11 days. 1 day to fly there, then you fly to Hawaii, and then 1 day to get back to LA, and then you fly right back. She was so scared of me going. But I kept saying, no way, no way.
Why were they letting you go? Why did they let you go?
Because in the policy they said that, it said that you could go on LOAs, and my stats were up, and, they didn't have any reason not to let me, that they could say not to let me go. They just kind of had to let me. During this time, my dad and my sister were really trying, they kind of criticized it, but I would say, stop, I can't hear this, because like I said about the thought policing, like you have to control every single thought of yours, and if someone says something bad to you, first you have to report that, but then it could get you thinking about it, and then you would have to report that too, and that's probably even worse when you start to think about it yourself. That just blows up the whole thing, and you get in a lot of ethics trouble. So I come back from that trip in Hawaii, and I say, okay, I want to go, for sure, I want to go. I want to leave. I want to go live with my dad. And I had another friend named Nicole Graham, who was trying to get out too.
How did you know she was trying to get out?
Because, well, it was against policy to ever tell anyone that you were like on a routing form to leave or anything, but it was obvious. Rumors went around in the cadet org, and that was one of the rumors. And also, I lived with Nicole. She was my dorm mate.
So did she talk to you about it at all?
Yeah, we weren't supposed to talk at all, but we started talking about like.
You did?
Yeah, a little bit. If anyone had ever found out, we would have gotten in a lot of trouble, but we would talk about how we liked having bodies and being people around on Earth, and we didn't want to leave and go to other planets like was taught in Scientology. Stuff like that.
How did it start that you began to be able to talk to each other about this?
Because we lived in the same room, and we both wanted to leave, so it was kind of like something we had in common. And
was it kind of a big thing the first time you guys...
We would just be like a little honest, and we kept kind of injecting more honesty into our conversation. Mm-hmm. Nicole was known as like the girl not to mess with. She's kind of a tough girl, and she's got a lot of muscles, and she can like glare at you with her eyes, and just enough to make you like run 100 feet. She's just tough. But like she had gone through a lot. Like at one point, when she refused to go in this year, she was like, "I'm not going in." Top management, RTC rep, had come down and said she has to get audited or spiritual processing. And what they did was they sat her down in a room, they made her hold the E-meter, that electrical instrument like a lie detector, and they said, who did you kill? Who did you, that was the only question. They said, who did you kill? Who did you, and she was like, no one, what are you talking about, no one? And they're like, who did you kill? Who did you kill? They were yelling it at her.
What are they talking about?
I was even walking by, and then I heard yelling, and I found out she started getting up. She's like, I'm not going through this. I'm not going to listen to this. And then the auditor, or the guy that was getting her confession, or was supposed to get her confession, like walked around and held her hands to the cans and was saying, you're not going anywhere. Her friend was hearing this because her friend was on the other side. Her name was Lahai. She punched the guy. So then Lahai and Nicole like ran off, and they refused to go back to the QI for like a day. They like stayed out.
Why was he saying this? Who did you kill?
I don't know. Well, they assume that like anyone who criticizes Scientology has high crimes, but also I guess it translated to anyone who knew of the greatness of the Sea Org and didn't want to go in must have crimes.
I'm thinking a possible explanation for that. In a confessional, if the person is reluctant to confess to crimes, they'll say to them, well, did you murder someone? Did you do this? Like, they go for like a really bad crime to make it easier to for them to confess like something lesser. It's like a technique.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
So I think they were like,
possible.
you know.
You're right. It's called the murder technique.
Yeah,
Murder routine.
yeah.
Then
It's
that
called
would
the
make
murder
sense.
routine.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, so Nicole was also known as kind of, someone not to mess with, because there had been like these big sort of campaigns that would go on the cadet by the cadet coordinator, the person that ran all the cadets, like to censor, like, I don't know how to describe this, but, well, just they would go through our rooms, look at all our magazines, bring them down to the office, look at all our CDs, and because any scented shampoo, conditioner, any hygiene products, or anything you had scented was not okay, they would bring all your hygiene products down to the office.
This is because it's a rule in the Sea Org that you can't have any kind of smells.
Yeah,
you have to use
because psychiatrists
laundry,
make those or something.
You have to use detergent without a smell. You have to use lotion without a smell. Everything has to be without a smell.
Yeah, they would bring them down to the office, and we would get angry because they would then take our CDs and throw them away. Even like things you would think were okay, they'd be like, no, they're not in the right emotional level, like the right tone level. They're in anger over something. Magazines were taken away because they dealt with sex and boyfriends and girlfriends, and in the cadet we weren't allowed to date. Archie comics?
Yeah.
Okay, at one point for the longest time, even before these whole campaigns started, we'd only read Archie comics Saturdays, and later it was, and video game Saturdays, and later both of those were totally against the rules, because Archie comics, Archie is always trying to get with Veronica or Betty. They consider that it dealt too much with boys and girls and dating and sex. So
You were 14 and you couldn't read an Archie comic?
no, that started way like when I first came to the cadet. That was already a rule, like when I was 9. So they would just start throwing our stuff away, and we would get angry because first we got no pay, then we got $16 pay, and then it got reduced to $8. I was getting a little bit more because I had higher school certificates, so I was getting $12. I really had to plan with my allowance, like, okay, if I have the day off, I'm going to go to the movies, that's a $3 ticket, and I might have enough to buy one candy bar, and then I have to spend like $6 to do my laundry, and then I'll save like $1.50 to spend on snacks throughout the week. Like that was normally where I always spent my pay. But anyway, so during all this, I'm trying to get out with my dad.
Can I just butt in and I would like to just explain the trip to Hawaii, because at this point my other daughter she'd been in the Sea Org, and then she'd gotten pregnant, she'd gotten out, and as you know, even though she had a beautiful baby, as far as I was concerned, her life had been screwed up. She was, she had a huge complex about the fact that she'd had no education, hadn't graduated high school, and I was just, the more she told me about her experiences in the Sea Org, the more disgusted I was, sort of coming out of my shell, the more disgusted I was, and I was just becoming more and more determined that Zoe would not go in the Sea Org at any cost. And so plus I also had the thought of, well, I'm not going to let a daughter of mine who's like 14 at this stage go into the Sea Org, and then, if she becomes pregnant by accident or whatever, she's going to be thrown out with like another $90,000 freeloader bill. I'm just not going to have this done to my daughter. So Astra and I hadn't seen her for a year, so Astra and I schemed, like, how can we get her out? How can we get her out? We're walking a fine line. If we talk to her and present data to her and criticize the church, we're gonna lose her. So then we came up with the idea of, let's have this great vacation in Hawaii, and we thought that if we said, like, we've already gone and paid for the airfare, paid for the vacation, it's only for 10 days, I haven't seen her for a year, we thought she'll get permission to come. Mm-hmm. And so and then while she's in Hawaii, she'll have fun, she'll relax, she'll spend time with her family, she'll see a whole other side of life, and it would just, maybe unstabilize her, maybe, and anyway, we went to Hawaii. She had a great time, but I just couldn't quite get through to her. You know, whenever I tried to criticize Scientology or say what could happen in the Sea Org, she would like withdraw. And eventually we came back, we finished our time in Hawaii and we were back on the mainland, and like I was getting, you know, then her mother started to call to say, Zoe, you have to come back now, you have to come back now, and I was getting desperate. So like one night I remember we just like, do you remember that night? I just threw everything at you, I kind of lost it, and
You weren't even that honest, you weren't even like, Scientology's so horrible, you were just like, the Sea Org's horrible.
Yeah, I was saying, Zoe, are you really sure you want to go in the Sea Org? Like, look what happened to your sister.
And I got angry.
And I was like losing you. You were like clamming up on me. You know, you didn't want me to be. And then I just pushed harder and I pushed harder and I said, you know, do you want to be pregnant? Do you want to end up with a huge bill? You know, do you want to work an 80-hour week? Do you want to have no education? I pushed harder, and then eventually I just broke through, and she said, I want to leave. You know, I don't want to be in the Sea Org. And it was like,
it's true.
It was like a miracle.
But I still went back. Dad was like, no,
And then,
don't go back on the
then
plane.
I said,
don't go
okay,
back on the
Zoe,
plane."
you
I still
don't
went
have to
back.
go back. You don't have to go back. Please don't go back. And then her mother was calling her and guilt-tripping her, and I just couldn't. She said, I have to go back. I want to go back and handle it. I want to go back and leave properly. I still want to, I love my mother. I don't want to leave on bad terms. I love my grandmother. I don't want to leave on bad terms. She was completely conflicted. And I said, Zoe, just stay in LA and you know, we can handle them by phone. And the more I pushed, the more resolve she had to go back and handle it properly. But I know the Sea Org, I know how it works. I knew that they'll just, you know, run around in circles. And we drove her to the airport, and all the time we were, Zoe, don't go back. Zoe, don't. And all the way up to the return gate at the airport, we were saying, you don't have to do this. Stay, we can handle it. But, you know, but I couldn't just force you we couldn't just hold you, you know, because...
Yeah. Well,
anyway, so we let she went back, you know.
Yeah. So then I went back and I kept trying to handle it, and I got given this program to do. But every time I finished something, a new step was added to the program, a new Scientology doctrine to study.
When you went back, you told them that you wanted to leave the Sea Org?
Oh, well, actually, they had already gotten me all lined up. Nicole warned me when I got back. She said, you know what, they are totally going to try to recruit you right now because a bunch of the cadets had just gone in the Sea Org and they really wanted me for a certain job. And I said, okay, thanks for warning me. So like 3 days after I got back, Jim, Sadeko, and my mother got together at the QI. My mother had just come for a visit somehow. It was really weird because, you know, I never saw my mother at the QI. And they said, well, let's take a walk. And I knew what was happening. I was like, okay, let's take a walk. And we went outside and they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to leave. I said the same thing I said, the first thing I said like years before. I said, I want to go to college and I want to go live with Dad. And I got the same reaction, sort of like kind of muffled because I was older now and I had kind of grown up to be a bit more strong-willed than the other cadets in terms of like what people could force me to do. Yeah, then I got put on this program and my mom was all disappointed in me and I cried about that, but it was like, you know what, I have to get over it. Because I was starting to realize at that point that my mother would never approve of me doing anything different than the Sea Org. Even if I was like a Scientologist and going up the path of spiritual enlightenment, you know, and buying courses regularly, she would never approve of what I was doing or what I wanted to do. So this was 98.
98, yeah.
I got put on this program and I was treated as a horrible person. Everyone didn't really like me anymore. My friends kept trying to persuade me that I should go in the Sea Org and that I was just, you know, putting myself through misery I wasn't doing the smart thing because I was leading such a bad life now. People just didn't like me anymore, and I'd known like, oh, 1,000 plus people here in Clearwater that were Sea Org members, and suddenly when people found out about me leaving or me wanting to leave, they kind of frowned at me and they didn't want to talk to me anymore. And I didn't really get pay anymore. I got a little bit of pay because I still worked. In fact, I worked more than usual because I want to leave. So I kept doing these studies, my mom kept adding stuff on, and I was still significant at this time. I still believed in Scientology, and I still felt that I should never ruin my Scientology studies by, you know, going past a word I didn't understand, so I was still significant. So that went on more than a year. And no one wanted me to be with other people because I might infect them with my new ideas of freedom. My stuff was just brought one day in a laundry basket in a cardboard box, all my belongings. And just said, here's your stuff, you're moving in with your mom now. And I was really upset about that because it was kind of like all the stuff I owned, everyone else handled and just shoved into a laundry basket and just brought into where I worked and said, here, you don't live here anymore, even though I'd been living at the QI then for like 5 years. So I just lived with my mom. I slept on the floor right next to her bed, or her small bedroom, which she shared already with an elderly lady. I slept on the floor like crammed in between a table and her bed.